I was catching a flight to Dallas out of Las Vegas, and if you've ever flown out of the McCarran Airport, you know there's a couple of big parking structures there, and I used to park my car on the top level because that way I always could remember where I parked it when I would come home from the trip. This was in the middle of August, and so as you can imagine, it was really hot and over 115 degrees up there. I grabbed my bags, got in my car, and I was making my way across the deck to the elevators to get down to the gate. And I heard this sound, and it caught my attention. The sound was this kind of metal on glass kind of screeching sound. And then I looked toward where the origin of where the sound was coming from, and I saw this late model luxury automobile parked way off on the edge of the parking deck. And there was this young Latina who was trying to break into this car and using this Slim Jim coat hanger, whatever it was. So that's the conclusion that I immediately came to. She's trying to boost this car or break into it and grab whatever she could out of that, because if you take those things together, Las Vegas, young Latina, late model, luxury automobile, just doesn't add up, right? So before I called the authorities, I decided maybe to get a little more information, or maybe to validate or verify what it was that I was seeing and hearing. So I left my luggage and I started to get closer to her. I came up on her blind side. I was still about 20 yards away, right? And trying to determine what was going on. And that's when I got more information. I could see through the back window of the automobile the handle to a child's car seat, an infant car seat in the back of the car. And then I could hear the shrill screaming of a baby inside the car. Well, things added up a little bit differently for me. And I started to run, and I asked the woman, what's going on? She goes, I locked my keys in my car, and my baby is inside there, and she's roasting, she's cooking, and I need to get her out. I use this story to illustrate the perceptual process. And that's something that we need to understand, especially when we're dealing with lying and deception. If we're trying to go through and determine whether or not somebody is fabricating what is it they're saying, we have to go through and check how our own perceptual process might lead us down the wrong path in that determination. So there are 4 different steps or stages to the perceptual process, and I want to go over those with you and then talk about how we might be influenced within those stages in another clip, okay? So the stages are sensation, organization, interpretation, evaluation, all right? I'm just making sure I got the order right on those. The sensation stage is pretty straightforward. That's where we gather data. And we have tools to gather data. That's our senses, our eyes, our ears. What did I see? I saw this young Latina using some kind of a tool to open the door or break into a late model luxury sedan. What did I hear? Well, I heard the screeching of the sound of her using that tool. And as I got closer, there are 2 more things that I picked up in terms of data. One was obviously seeing the handle to the baby carrier, and the second was the screeching of the baby who was inside the car. Now that's it. That's where that stage stops, is we just gather information, okay? And sometimes we're not always gathering the correct information, or the information might be skewed by how we have organized that information. Our frame of reference to me is like this huge file cabinet system I have in my brain. It goes on for miles, right? And each file drawer we open up, and you know what? Apparently I have a file on Mexicans. I have a file on young Latinas, at the time at least, because that's how I started organizing the data that I was sensing coming in. Oh, Latina, late model car, Las Vegas. Well, all that comes together, and it must mean she's, you know, that's further on down the process, so I won't go there just yet. Our file cabinets are put there by lots of different influences, not the least of which is media. I found that travel is a great way to go through and get new files, or maybe to shred the old files and put some new files in there as you get inundated with culture and you start to talk to real people instead of going through and seeing how they are imagined through some producers or directors or actors' eyes or interpretation of that. So anyway, sensation, we draw in data, organization, we start to organize that into something, and then we try to make sense out of that. And that's the interpretation stage. That's where we add meaning to what it is that we think we're seeing. And that's where we get into trouble, okay? We have certain influences on that stage that I'll talk about in the next clip. But once we have that interpretation in hand, then it's really easy to default to stage 4, which is the evaluation stage. Now, when we're evaluating somebody, it's usually done negatively or positively, right? Anything else is a description, okay? But the evaluation is like, oh, they're doing something really good, or oh, they're breaking into a car. It happens in less time than it takes to say sensation, interpretation, organization, evaluation. And if we're not careful on how quickly our brain comes to that conclusion, we might be labeling somebody who is telling a lie as somebody who's being truthful because we're attributing them with positive attributes. We like them. The people that we like are the ones who have the easiest time lying to us. The people that we don't like are the ones who are under constant suspicion because we don't give them the benefit of the doubt. Again, because the perceptual process shuts that down. So that's the process. It's important for you to exercise that. In fact, while you're talking to people, think to yourself, how am I drawing in this data? How do I organize that data? What does it mean to me? And how do I end up evaluating what it is that I'm seeing or who it is that I'm listening to? One main trick to this is to slow down that time between interpretation, where we add meaning, and evaluation, where we go through and either discount what's going on, or maybe we're blinded by what we think is good about the situation. Okay? Watch for the next video. It'll pop up right about there.